I'm back, and so is my cancer. Recall that I had 8 weeks of daily radiation from September 25 through December 17, 2021. Had PSA test post-radiation. My PSA was 0.008, or undetectable, the equivalent of 0, with the modern ultrasensitive PSA test. That held until August of this year, where I had September of this year actually, I had a 0.008, and then in December, 0.036. Yes, my PSA, measured by the ultrasensitive test, increased 4.5 times in the course of 4 months. Diagnosis, micrometastases, that is, small bits of cancerous evilness floating around my body, doing what it will, where it will. Next steps, well, we'll talk about that. Gotta go see an oncologist, determine exactly the nature of my cancer cells and what the appropriate treatment will be, so stay tuned.
Here's a record of my PSA scores over time. You can see it begins with a March 2020 score of 16.358. I actually, in December of 2019, had a score of 17.6 and retested as a condition to starting to think about treatment. I had a radical prostatectomy, July 2020. You can see 2 months later, my PSA is undetectable. On September 4, 2020, December 1, 2020, still undetectable. June 30, 2021, 0.31. A couple of months later, September 2021, I've got a 0.042. That is when I started radiation treatment. It was somewhat controversial. I had to force the issue with my urologist and my radiation oncologist, who were relying on old non-ultrasensitive PSA tests to tell me that I needed to wait until I got about a 0.5. And I sent both gents recent literature indicating that recent studies, the ultrasensitive PSA test, a test of 0.03 is a demarcation of mortality or survival rates. You also got a D-cipher test, which is a measure of the aggressiveness of my cancer. When that test came back, my urologist grabbed me by the back of the shirt, put me in front of the line for Yale's radiation oncology treatment, and I received 8 weeks of daily radiation Monday through Friday from September 25th through December 17th, 2021. Here's that decipher score that I received in July of 2021. You can see I got a 0.9. The scale goes from 0 to 1, so about as high a ranking, as bad a ranking as one gets. That is as aggressive a flavor of prostate cancer as is possible. And when my urologist again received that information, combined with the information I had sent him about the meaning of, the implications of that ultrasensitive PSA score above 0.03, I then was ushered into the front of the line for that thrilling bit of radiation. Let's talk a little bit about this ultrasensitive PSA test, because you fellow sufferers of prostate cancer may run up against this same issue. Here's a relatively recent study indicating that the ultrasensitive PSA score greater than or equal to 0.03 is an independent factor that identifies biochemical recurrence, BCR, more accurately than any traditional risk factors. So early on, this is back in around 2016, 2017, the urological community, at least in its academic and professional publications, came to realize that ultrasensitive PSA score was meaningful and that cutoff point of 0.03 was particularly meaningful. And one final data point. This is the Mayo Clinic's presentation on prostate cancer as of today, December 23, 2022. It references that ultrasensitive PSA test, and in particular, that 0.03 nanograms per milliliter cutoff point. I'll read this one for us. A cutoff of 0.03 nanograms per milliliter also predicted BCR, biochemical recurrence, that is the return of cancer, independent of other clinical pathological factors. Most importantly, 90.8% of those who had a score of less than 0.03 were cancer-free for 5 years, and only 26.9% of those with scores greater than or equal to 0.03 nanograms per milliliter were cancer-free for 5 years. I'll leave you with this lovely image of prostate cancer cells. I'll report back on my treatment. Typical treatment is ADT, androgen deprivation therapy, that is, taking Lupron or something similar that blocks the production of testosterone. Yeah, it has all the lovely side effects on a man one might think that creates, But I'll be talking to my urologist in February, and before that an oncologist next month in January, and I'll report back on my next episode of Prostate Cancer Recovery Diary. Take care, stay well, and as always, rave on.